The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
Hi, this is Ashley Eckstein, the voice of Ahsoka Tano from Star Wars, and you're listening to the Secrets of Star Wars podcast. May the Force be with you.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Welcome to Secrets of Star Wars, where we discuss everything connected to that galaxy far, far away. From movies to books, TV shows, and more, we're looking at the deeper themes and meanings and finding hope in the Star Wars universe. Today, we are talking about the season finale of Skeleton Crew, the real good guys. I'm your host, Robert King. Joining me today are Jon Koral and Mike Creavey. Welcome, John.
Hello.
And it's good to see you, Mike.
Hey, good to be back.
Before we jump into things, we want to thank our patrons. This episode, we'd especially like to thank Dan C., Kenneth P., Scott L., James H., and Christoph K. We could not make the Secrets of Star Wars without you, so we are incredibly grateful to your support for this show and all the shows here at StarQuest. Any of you listening can join them. Just go to our website, sqpn.com/give. Okay, so last episode of the season, our heroes are still held hostage at the Mint as Jod maintains his guise as the Republic emissary. He orders Wim, Neil, KB to be confined to their homes while he takes Fern and Farah to meet the Supervisor. Now, the Supervisor is revealed to be a massive droid. Surprise! Now, when the Supervisor contradicts Jod's claim about being a Jedi, catches him in a lie, he reveals, well, that at least Order 66 has got through to Ad-Aden. So there's something of interest. Jod doesn't like being caught in a lie, and so he stabifies the Supervisor. This causes a blackout across the entire city, shuts down all the safety droids, and with Farah's help, he deactivates the barrier long enough for the pirate ship to come in, and they begin their invasion of the planet. They seem to have the intention of enslaving the populace. Wim, Wendell, and Neil and KB, they all race to the Onyx Cinder with the idea of getting out and getting some help. But the ship is locked in place. So Wim and Wendell have to go find a way to turn the power back on, unlock the ship. They go to the Supervisor's tower where they encounter Jod and Fern and Farah. I'm going to get those names mixed up a lot this episode, I think. And they all, shenanigans ensue. They do manage to get the power to the ship so KB and a now repaired SM-33 can get out. But it's just a battle of wits and brawn and force to whether Jod is going to prevail or the kids and their parents. But ultimately, they sort of stall each other long enough for the New Republic to come in. Well, they're able to disable the barrier entirely. They destroy it so that the New Republic can come in, save the day, forcing Jod to admit defeat. Everyone then races to the Onyx Cinder, which had crashed, and they make sure that KB is indeed okay. Take a deep breath. We're all going to be okay. And maybe most importantly, Wim doesn't have to take his assessments. So
It reminded me a little of the Harry Potter thing of like, all right, you guys have almost been killed. No finals.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, yes.
Yeah. Oh boy, extra points to Gryffindor. Yes.
Yeah.
There's so much going on, but maybe let's start with the supervisor, because we had been speculating a lot over the course of the series about the supervisor and its role in the story and so on. And as some of us were thinking, at least as a possibility, yes, the supervisor's a big droid, played by Stephen Fry, delightfully. What did you think about, first off, how the supervisor was presented, and then the role the supervisor got to play in the whole drama of things?
John, do you want to go?
Well, you both look thoughtful.
Well, I mean, I was wondering at the beginning of it, it's like, is this kind of more like a Wizard of Oz thing where there's actually something behind it and not just a droid, and then the idea that it was just a droid, and they said, well, it was decreed by the great work. And then it makes me wonder, what is the great work I mean, obviously the credits are the great work, but if it's decreed by the great work, where did that decree come from? Like above that, I guess, or something is that. And then I just wondered where I'm assuming then all the other planets that had great works with them and stuff also had droid supervisors. And I don't know. It just seemed, because they had that supervisor tower and that other planet they went to. Yeah. So I don't know. It just seemed like I liked it overall, but like it kind of made sense. But I guess what also threw me a little bit for a loop was the dust and everything up there. So
that was a thick layer of dust.
Yeah.
So obviously you don't.
You can't get droids in there to clean up the dust. Like what?
They were moving pretty slow when they got activated, so it was.
That's true. Yeah.
But I don't know. But other than so obviously humans weren't up there often to do it seems like so.
Although there were plenty of consoles for humans to work at, so
yeah. When her mom didn't seem like so completely, like she was shocked that like Fern was getting to go up at her age, but I kind of almost like, to me it almost seemed like she'd been up there before, like I don't know, I just kind of felt like maybe I misinterpreted a little bit, but it felt like a little bit of a surprise that then her mom and then apparently nobody else for God knows how long has been up there at all.
And I'm not even sure her mom had ever.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. It didn't seem like she had been there.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, because she's like, well, make sure you don't slouch and, give a good impression and all that stuff. So it was like, but then I guess, the supervisor could be just watching him from any kind of council or whatever. And that's how they know, okay, this is Fern and this is Farah and this is, the as the undersecretary and that kind of stuff. So I don't know. So maybe they didn't need to be up there, but.
Well, considering how everything shut down when the supervisor went down, I mean, I almost get the sense that the supervisor, like, was all of the security like, or at least was getting the same like input that all the droids was seeing through their camera heads and so on.
Well, rarely do I jump over into that other beloved franchise with Star in the title, but I did think a little bit with
Star Search?
Starman, no, Stargate in Star Trek was not Undiscovered Country. What was the one where they was it Undiscovered Country where they go to the god of Shakari? No, which one's that? That's the
I think that was the Final Frontier.
Final Frontier, yeah. But Kirk's, of course, classic question, what does God need with a starship? I was wondering the same thing. I was like, what do all these droids need with credits? Like, because to me, it was just a little strange. Like, I mean, no, they're using them, like the humans on Adden are using them for like lunch money and stuff, we know. But there's some sort of exchange going on. But I was just like, it's just the scale of it. I feel like I have so many questions. Like, I want to know more about like, what is going, like, I really still feel like I don't understand what's going on with like this massive operation, where they're, just they're cut off and they still keep producing stuff, like Wally keeps cleaning up. That's the same kind of thing, like if the program's still running, I guess, but it just seems sort of strange to me. I'd like to know more about how they got cut off. Like, I heard a neat theory early on that didn't pan out, that, well, maybe not, but, it doesn't seem to have panned out, that, the droids were somehow tied to like a droid or droids that the pirate captain was rented, Captain Rented, whatever.
Tack Rented?
Tack Rented, like what exactly was the nature of how he met his end, and how that did that play into the development of this mint? It seems like he found the mint, so it was already in progress, or it was an Old Republic mint. The Old Republic's a thing. He lands there and finds it. But yeah, I felt like what happened to him? I don't know. I just had a lot of questions coming out of it. I think that didn't get tied up.
Yeah, definitely a lot of lore questions.
Right. Yeah.
Like I feel like, yeah, I think I was more hoping that the supervisor would have more of a role to play. Yeah, I was surprised that it got, just taken out of the picture entirely so quickly. Mm-hmm. I really loved the kind of creepiness of, it's like, oh, Farah, you're one of our best, oh gosh, whatever her title is.
Undersecretary.
You're one of our best directors, undersecretaries. And I've been watching your daughter too. It's like, oh, okay. But then that same creepiness is kind of turned on its head when it's like, so tell me, which are you? A Jedi or a liar? A traitor or a liar?
So yeah. It's like, which lie do you want to say? Like, well, okay. That was so creepy.
Yeah, that was, and of course, with Stephen Fry's voice, who can walk that line of, friendly uncle or absolute creeper villain,
right? Like psychopathic,
and you really don't know which it is, and you could like hear it both ways, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, because I was wondering too, because they were saying, well, no ships are allowed in or going out, and with the, especially through the barrier and stuff, and then we can't communicate with the barrier up, blah blah blah, all these other things. And then the thing is well, then if they're building all these credits, well, they have to get them out at some point. So is that what the emissary does? He comes in and then takes away so many credits for the Republic. I mean, it was just kind of like, otherwise you're just building and for what?
Well, I mean, from the supervisor's point of view, it seemed to be like, that's just our programming. Very much the Wall-E kind of thing. It's like, right. But yeah, I mean, you could hear the sarcasm in the supervisor's voice. Like, we were beginning to wonder if another emissary was ever coming.
Right.
And then, yeah, I was surprised, at least, by just the sheer connectedness of everything to the supervisor. How utterly, all of the power goes out, except the power to the control panels in the supervisor's office. But just everything, and how it emphasizes their streets are, their vehicles are
grid.
Powered by the street grid, and so they're so completely immobilized without the supervisor.
Which again, something similar seems to have been likely to have happened on at least that one other planet they visited, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe the others too, if it was that networked. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the supervisor just, becomes a threat to Jod Nanawood, and Jod has no compunction at all about completely destroying my instinct is to call it a computer, but they refer to the supervisor as a droid, and I'm wondering, is a droid just a computer with personality? I think of droid as having some kind of mobility to it, right. I think.
Yeah. Yeah, because they don't call even though, they tied in the whole L3 connection and Solo to her being uploaded to the Falcon's computer, it's there seems to be a distinction right between the computer on the ship, right? Mm-hmm. Versus a droid walking around or moving around. So yeah, that was a little, I guess he spun though. So that's some kind of, it's like the giant R2-D2 head. But that's I think I need a little more than that. No, yeah. So it was an interesting choice. It was not what I was expecting, I think. I expected there to actually be a human in there somewhere. So that was a little surprise.
We were looking for the Wizard of Oz.
Right, exactly. That's what John said. That I was like, that's exactly. Yep. I'm like, where's the curtain?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm such a Stephen Fry fan. I'm super happy with what we got, but I would have liked more. Yeah.
Did they hide? I didn't notice. Did they hide his involvement? I didn't see him in the credits ahead of time or anything.
I don't. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't really watching. So yeah.
Right.
But, but again, whatever it is, computer or droid, Jod Nanawood had no compunction about hurting it, even though he seems to have some compunction about hurting, organic life forms.
Yeah.
He'll do it. You stand in the way of what he wants, he will kill you, but he doesn't like it.
When he totally blasted Brutus, my wife and I were watching that one, and we were both like, whoa, okay. But he did, the very first scene we saw him in, he very casually, the captain of the ship they captured, he's out the airlock. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, that was a little unpredictable. With the kids, at least, it did seem the tension he had when he was challenging Fern for the captainship, and everything. But that was, I didn't know if that was legit then, because the last 2 episodes or so, that seemed to be out the window. I don't know.
Well, I'm just thinking, he said a couple of times, I don't want to hurt anybody.
Right.
It doesn't have to be like this. And he absolutely has a willingness to murder, straight up. And I don't want to jump into his great speech too soon, because it's a great speech and I want to talk about it on its own. But, he says, those pinpricks of light, and for those I'll kill who I need to kill.
Mm-hmm.
Which is just I don't know. I hope we get a chance to
really
unpack the morality and psychology of that.
Right.
And yet he's very reluctant, and it's don't make me. He's trying to blame someone else for making him kill them. So sorry, I cut you off there, John.
No, I was just gonna say too. It's Fern and Farrah are there, and when they're scheming, he could have just shot him, he would have maybe a pirate or something, but he would just give those warning shots, kind of thing. And same thing, it's throughout all the stuff that happens up there. He threatens death and killing them and stuff, but, he didn't go for, with a lot of that. He had the lightsaber at somebody's throat, early on with Fern, well, tell me how to do this. And then Farrah would tell him how to, get the ship through the barrier and stuff like that. And so I think, maybe the children, because he has more of a personal connection to them or something, and, their parents, he threatens the children with their parents, it's in the prior episode, but then at the same time, does he want to kill them? Or, and like Mike said too, with the episode where he takes over the captaincy with the, threatening, it's don't make me kill you, that kind of stuff. It's just the whole, so he does have we do see a ruthless side of him, but then you do see a side that is conflicted, I guess, with with taking certain action on certain people anyways.
It's my sense with Brutus was that they had so much history, that he was just furious and kind of like,
yeah, he's done.
Yeah, he's put him done with Brutus. Yeah.
It's like he's a dog. No,
he was, yeah, kind of literally. But you know, he was my first mate. He betrayed me. He's done. But he does seem to have this sense of, you know, innocent bystanders, and especially the kids, and I think that's really fascinating. That, like, he's okay. Yeah. Let's just jump into that speech because it is so good. You can see the frustration. He's talking to Wim, right? And Wim is about to pull the lever that'll shut down the barrier, and Jod is almost begging him. He's got his lightsaber to Wim's dad's throat, and it's like he's begging Wim to give up on his idealism and his hope and his sense of righteousness. Mm-hmm. And that's when he tells his story you know, it's like it's almost like he's saying it's worse to have the idea that you might be special in some way, that you might have some higher purpose in life, that you might have something more than just, you know, immediate power or wealth or, you know, cold hard credits.
In a different kind of way, that reminded me a little bit of it's not maybe the best analogy, but Ronan / Hawkeye at Avengers, you know, when she tries to recruit him when he's just gone off the deep end and he's like, don't do that, you know, don't give me hope kind of thing.
Yeah.
The idea of where, like, it's just don't, you know, like it's you know, I'm already in this darkness. I can't bear to hope again. And that's, you know, I mean, it's as simple as anybody who's ever had a broken heart or anybody who's ever, like, you didn't get in the college you wanted. Like, we've all had that moment, right? Where, you know, like, you don't want to get your hopes up again, you know? So yeah, that's a good, you know, a good meditation, I think, in so many ways.
Yeah. And the one thing that he has found, the only thing that he, you know, he feels like everything in the galaxy has let him down. Mm-hmm. It's like you promised me something and then you let me down, and the only thing that has never let me down is money.
Credits.
You know, good, cold, hard credits. And well,
there's a tragedy here too, because he doesn't use the Force a lot in the show, but like just enough to, I think, give the impression that, at least the takeaway I had was, like, he could have, I mean, he has real, like, raw power. He has tremendous control over it. Like, he has this just, like, he should have been a Jedi, you know, and you really get that sense, the tragedy of, like, this completely wasted talent, you know?
Yeah.
What was, because he doesn't even, it's like he doesn't even have the drive, though, to, like, he doesn't become a Sith. Like, he just, it's just completely, like, he uses it, but it's not what it was. It's like parlor tricks, but it was meant to be something, like, for service to others. Like, and we hear that a lot again in our faith too, right? That motif over and over, that every gift we have is given to us to give away, you know, to be at the service of others. And he's not, he's totally at the service of himself, but it's like, he doesn't even go all in. Like, he could be a Sith or something. So yeah, it's just, that's a interesting, I liked all that about his character. I felt like we could have gone a little deeper somehow, but I don't know. Season 2? I don't know.
Season 2, maybe. And the theories. I mean,
it's possible.
It's a kid's show. It's not, you know, but yeah, I think he is a remarkably complex character because of that.
Mm-hmm.
I like your comparison with the Sith, because, you know, usually when it's, you know, we're looking at the Sith, we're looking at hatred and anger and fear and you know, those kind of intense dark emotions. But what I get from Jod is much more of a the vice that's often translated as sloth,
Yes.
But sometimes we try to like mispronounce the Greek or whatever, the Acadia or Acadia. That sense of like, I think Thomas Aquinas describes it as sadness at the good things of God and his creation.
I think Peter Creavey calls it the refusal to take the soul's medicine, something like that. Like just
giving up.
Nah.
It's like it's not, nothing's worth it. It's not worth the effort. I just give up. All I want are the credits to keep me comfortable.
It's almost like I wonder if this is I want to think about this more, but I'm thinking about like Paul as Saul, right? Versus Judas, for example, like where Judas just kind of settles for so little, and then can't bring himself to even repent, in a meaningful way. But then like Saul, I mean, I always feel like, looking at St. Paul, like he didn't lose one bit of his vigor, like it's just, I feel like, he's just ranting and raving and God just goes, no, over this way. You're like, no, you need to do this, but keep all that energy and all that fire, because he did, but it was pointing in the right direction. So that, but then,
so
John doesn't do that.
Judas is a pirate and Saul is a Sith.
Yes. What? Yes. No, I'll have to think about that one. I've got my homework cut out for me after this one, but yeah. Oh my goodness.
How do we read then that, like, our last scene with him, Wim seems to want him to come with them to rescue KB, and Jod just stays behind and then goes out and looks out at the window at his old ship smashing into the planet, and he has a couple different really expressive looks on his face, and it's like, go Jude Law, you are an actor.
Well done. And then on top of it all too, before that, when the barrier is opened, then he also has like a dejected look, like, it's like, now it's all coming to an end, so it might be like, here's the same old, it's like, and I had it and now I'm losing it again, kind of thing, or just in the grip, and then
the 1100 volts, like, nope. No.
So then you add the then the pensive look, and then looking out, and that was, I mean, I was thinking, I think he gave a pause to think maybe I should go with them because of, at one moment, but then I think he just then turned around and then looked outside and just, saw, what he's used to seeing is set, and, it all coming to an end, and then maybe he's thinking about what's the next step for him. But
that's I interpreted that the very last look. It seemed to me was like, I know what I'll do. Like, it's, I don't know, it just seemed like a, he's like, like Jack Sparrow or just any, it's just like, like, like it's still, you love him, but like with him, it wasn't a quite like one for one. He had kind of a Jack Sparrow thing for a while, but then after I don't know, it was, even turning on the kids, like that was, Jack did that a few times, of course, but there was something about those next few episodes that just, I don't know, I felt less endeared to him, like in episodes, I don't know, like 6 or 7, somewhere that it kind of, he didn't feel the same. And then in this one, I wasn't so sure, but then by the end, I don't know, I kind of feel like I recovered a little bit of that, like, he'll be around, he'll figure something out, there's a next step for him. That was kind of my feeling on it.
Yeah, I like that movement from like over the course of the series. I definitely got, he's charming at the beginning, and then these last couple episodes, like the tragedy of his, like, almost deliberately pushing himself further into despair. It was coming out, and then that last look, kind of like you, I think I got, there's an idea. here's what I'll do. And not quite a smile, but a little bit of a smirk to, yeah. I don't know, John, how did you read that last look?
Yeah, similar. I mean, it seemed like, like I said, he was watching it all go down, and, something he's used to, I guess, the, being a pirate who's always wanted the big score, but always come up short, it seems like. But yeah, I mean, it did seem like, though, he's coming up with, like I said, the next step and figuring out where he's going to go from there, because he's always managed to get by somehow. And but what I thought was, or maybe, well, I was going to say maybe what Fern said earlier, but she was talking to her mother. So unless he heard her with that story about when she's trying to convince her mom that we need to open the barrier, and she's like, look, Mom, I know the galaxy's a scary place, but even the worst places we've been to, there were good people who wanted to help us. And there's people out there who can help us right now. And she sees it a completely different way than he does. He sees a few pinpricks, and she sees it as, yeah, there is a lot of darkness, but there is a lot of light out there too, to help you even in the worst of the dark. And I thought that was interesting. And then, so unless he heard that, but it was kind of, as she's trying to build up her mom to say, here, we need to get our help and the barrier needs to come down. But whereas Jod was just, from his past experiences, just saw everything as negative, whereas she was more positive or optimistic about the galaxy as a whole.
That contrast between them, I mean, to some extent between all the kids, but Fern really speaking for them, and that completion of Fern's arc, having gone from so cynical at the beginning to to looking for trust, looking for hope, looking for goodness everywhere she can.
I feel like her arc was the best, at least for me, like the most completely handled. It would, and I don't know. I'd have to go back and rewatch it again to see like the balance of it. I mean, they had all the kids in it, pretty well balanced, but I mean, I think the show really started off feeling like Wim was going to be kind of like the main kid character, and I didn't quite come away with it. I think they all kind of evened out more or less at the end, but Fern, yeah, I thought that was a pretty well done kind of closing, that arc for her.
I mean, I think, as a story structure geek, I think Wim does still come out as the protagonist, structurally speaking. We start with him, and then we end with, literally we end with his final problem being solved.
Right. That's true.
I guess you don't have to take assessments.
Right.
But you're right. They did an amazing job of making all four kids almost equal in terms of their importance to the plot and the development of their arcs. And I mean, Fern definitely has her arc that we were just talking about. Wim has an arc, of basically being obsessed with what he wants and having adventure and having a life other than his own, other than the boringness. And now he has kind of become a leader by learning how to follow, by learning how to say, hey, here's problems in the world around me, not my problems directly, but we've got to help Fern. Oh, we've got to help KB. Oh, we've got, he's caring about other people, and that inspires other people to take action, and he follows and helps.
Right.
And then both Neil and KB, like, they very much start as sidekicks, and they are very much not sidekicks by the end. Neil is no longer afraid. KB is no longer doing what everyone else tells her to do. She's doing what she thinks and knows to be right. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. It's a great cast, great writing.
It really is. It felt organic. Like it felt like they didn't all the interaction that you mentioned there, is it's right. Like it all like they all kind of meet those needs, excuse me, that the others have. And yeah, it was a good that. And I think that was something we talked about early on. And then some of my friends and I talking about it beforehand, right? The lead up to the launch of the show, just the kind of skepticism about, this is really going to ride on how effective the kid cast is. Mm-hmm. And that's because that's, key, right, to the chemistry. Here we go again, Harry Potter, mentioning these different kinds of, these different franchises and such, but or like, the Goonies or any of those shows that they've talked about in the lead up to this show as being sort of some of the influences for it. If you don't get that right, that's something that could really make it fall apart. Even something, looking back on it, I love all the Star Wars movies, for what they are. But Jake Lloyd, there's moments, God bless him. But, you go back and you watch episode 1, you can't not cringe, sometimes at least, with some of the lines, how much of that was George making him say it or whatever. But, every time I hear I'm a person and my name is Anakin, I'm like, like why, Darth Vader never said that, come on, but still, like it's if you get that right in the kind of team component of those kid actors, it can really make a big difference. I think they did that really well here.
I was going to say,
yeah, go ahead, John.
That I also liked the especially the last episode, because you finally got to see a really good interaction between Wim and his dad Wendell, and then Fern and her mom Farrah. And I think, and it was interesting, like with Farrah and Fern, early in that one of the early episodes, Fern, of course, is always running away, doing her things. And Farrah even said, well, I used to run away, and then I just knew the safety droids would bring me home. So you could see, that side together. It's like, oh, well, that's where she gets some of her, rebellious spirit maybe from and stuff. But then what was really neat was seeing Wendell and Wim, because like when he's, Wendell, yells at us, is telling his son about, or Wim's telling you there's so much more out there. And he's like, look, don't you think I've ever thought about going, out on these kind of adventures with the Jedi? And then you see all of a sudden, Wendell has, where Wim maybe gets it too. And it's just, they've been so conditioned with this. We need to focus on the great work. Some of the, the life that they were younger has been kind of, softened or whatever. I loved his, yeah.
Well, was he the only one? I think he was maybe not the only one who reacted, but of course I loved like his reaction right again when they jumped that ditch. Yeah. Was just such a riot,
yes.
That he's like,
yeah. Well, I like the fact that the guy can ride a hover bike. It's like, you're thinking, he's telling, oh, it's too dangerous, let's not do this. And then,
right.
And then, I don't know, was I the only one? Granted, it wasn't like straight up, but it, because these shows have had this 80s feel and stuff, it did make me think of the kids on the bicycles running away and E.T., and going into the woods. And then, of course, they didn't leap in front of a moon, but, or fly in front of it. But that's what I like. That brought me back to that. But I also just like, though, too, it's like, then you see how quick to action he was, too, with his son is shot. Can you turn that back on the power? And he's like, son, you're talking to 11-7 systems coordinator. Get the bike.
Yes.
And
that was so good.
And then when he actually goes, and then after that big scene where he's about to get killed, or Jod's threatening him with a lightsaber, and they, then Wim backs off, they hug, then he turns around and just slugs the guy. It's like Jod and takes action, and it made me think too, and Wim's yelling, all right, we got to do something, attack, on that.
Yes, that was so good.
On that ship, and then he just easily gets grabbed, but you can.
It was worth a try.
But what was neat though is how you could see how the children, especially Wendell and Wim in this one, you know, the interaction between them and how they were more related. And you could see more of what Wendell was, and, you know, and then personified in Wim and how he did stuff. So it was kind of neat to see that kind of. And then, of course, you know, I wish they would have done a little bit more with the parents in this, you know, throughout the series. Just, I mean, not a whole lot, but that interaction was really good.
That said, I mean, like the family dynamics throughout the show were really, I mean, clearly a major part of what they were trying to do with the show was they showed the characters and the problems they had with their families, especially Wim and Fern. And then they threw the kids away from their families and, you know, that this idea of growing up, you know, especially Wim, but all of them, I think, really made significant steps in growing up. And,
well, and you also had a little bit with KB and her moms because, you know, you didn't really get much with Neil and his parents, but with her moms. And then she's like, "You can fly that thing?" "Yeah, I can. I have help," and you know, and all that. And then she's got him stay safe and all that kind of stuff. But it was like, but then when she's, you know, crashing and they're like, "You can do this, KB," you know, they're supporting her. It was neat to see that side of it too. And, you know, seeing, you know, because KB is coming across confident, "I can do this," and they're telling her you can and supporting her. And that was another nice touch with the parent, you know, involvement in this.
Yeah. Yeah. I really connected with, like each one of their journeys, I think. And it spoke to times in my childhood and honestly, sometimes times in my adulthood when I'm still like afraid of, you know, speaking my mind, afraid that someone won't like me, afraid that I'll get hurt or I'll lose something. And it just, you know, watching these kids like really work through all of those fears and anxieties and desires and such. I don't know. I thought they really captured the emotional struggle of it and the learning curve of facing that.
And also you have the part where the parents, you know, need to stop and listen to their kids and understand what is truly going on and stuff too. And it's not just, "Oh yeah, we're just going to do the great work. You got to do your assessment. You're going to, you know, do this, and this." And the kids are like, "No, but I really want this, you know." And then when they come back, of course, they're being watched by those safety droids, in which killing the supervisor was, like, to me, one of the worst decisions Jod made, at least because he lost all the safety droids watching the kids and stuff. But, you know, of course, I mean, he needed to do that, though, because of what was going on up there. But it was just, but that was the whole thing, too, because they couldn't communicate and they were real careful. And then once the safety droids were down, then all of a sudden they could take action. But
well, I think from the parenting thing, too, that really resonates with me is, you know, it reminded me a little bit of, you know, the whole idea of like trying to control everything, right? Or try to have that perfect little utopia type bubble, you know, and it makes total sense that, you know, you want to have all this stuff and have everything right for your kids. And it is, you know, it's good, you know, like you're supposed to protect them. And I mean, I'm running this, we've 3 little ones. And so it's constantly like every little thing. And I can get pretty obsessive with it. And I'm, you know, and at some point it's just like, because there's a fear in there. There's a fear that, like, at the end of the day, like, yeah, I'm supposed to do things and that I need to take it seriously and not be negligent and all that. But I can't control it all and I can't protect them from everything. And that's terrifying, you know. And it reminds me a little of in a more extreme way, the Village, you know, the M. Night Shyamalan movie that sometimes gets a bad rap. I think it's one of his best ones. We did a whole episode on that actually for SQPN. So go check that out. It was like 2 years ago or something. But that was a theme we talked about. Spoiler alert. And that, you know, here you have these people who have the movie's 20 years old. You should have seen it by now. But these people who have gone and tried to, I mean, like, put an unbelievable effort. I mean, like, the more effort than any of us, right? Like, into really putting your money where your mouth is and like committing fully to this environment of absolute perfection and protection, and evil still happens there. Like, bad still happens. People still, have crosses to bear. And it was just, it's a really interesting reality, to consider the reality of that our faith teaches us, right? That you post Eden, we can't possibly, actually achieve the perfect human society. So where's that balance, right? Like, striving to do all that we can, but then also recognizing you can't do it all and you need grace. And, so yeah, I don't think they didn't get into that spiritual sort of connection as much, but I think there was a little bit of just even the psychological side of it. And John, I think you hit the nail on the head there too. It's just the, sit down first, like, put the briefcase down. The hardest one for me was in the first episode when he just asks to have a story read to him. Right. He's like, aren't you getting a little big for that? Like, oh,
Yeah, sit down, have a nice home cooked meal in your microwave or whatever that was.
Yes, that was such a great line.
That was so good. I think that was really
missed this when you were out there.
That really hit me. It hit me in the feels recently. I think Matt Fradd was sharing something on one of his shows recently that I guess a friend of his, a mentor, of his, had said to him as advising him as a father, that like the time's going to come when your kid asks you for the last time for that thing, whatever it is, to do that thing with you, and you won't know when that is. And I'm like, oh no, and because ours are 8 and 4 and 1 right now, so I'm like, you get annoyed. It's like, oh god, this thing again, and then it's like, oh no, but someday, they're not going to ask me to do that anymore. Like, oh, so yeah, that hit me hard. Like, I was thinking of that, and then that episode where he's like, I'm not going to read you a story. I'm like, read him the story. Come on, man. He's already like 11 or something, 10. He's not going to do this much.
And he wants to have a little time with the dad too,
Yeah. And I think this is like, it gave the parents real learning that they needed to do. The parents were wrong about something, but they weren't idiots. They weren't stupid. And that's something that's so rare. Usually if the kids are right and the parents are wrong, it's because they make the parents out to be just stupid.
I think is that easier to do from a writing standpoint, maybe.
Maybe.
Like, everybody's Homer Simpson.
No. each of the parents, like, again, like, the parents we get to know least are the most sort of quote unquote normal ones. The the Neil's parents, they have that, but yeah, we see Wendell, who at first I thought Wendell was I don't know, I thought they were making Wendell a little bit stupid, but as the show goes on, you see he's not stupid, he's just broken. The man is just like brokenhearted and broken down, and he's just trying to get by. And Farah is, very much that, trying to protect and make sure her daughter has everything that she didn't have at all costs. And, that kind of very real motivation that is very flawed, because, we're in a flawed and broken world, and we're flawed and broken people, but it's almost the opposite of what Jod was saying. There's light all around us, but we seem to obsess with those pinpricks of darkness.
Yeah, well, when you're living on that planet too, though, I mean, you also have that barrier around, and you don't see any of those pinpricks in the galaxy, because you just, and then to see their awe when all of a sudden that clears, and it's like, oh wow, look at all those stars, and look at, it's, that
was a great moment.
And but going back a little bit, though, one of my favorite things too with Neil was the fact that he I loved it when, he got shot off his bike, and then you see him rolling away to get, to get to safety. But then to see him behind a turbo laser to provide cover was just absolutely great. And, seeing his arc, as he gained confidence, but he was, I forget what the girl he met, but he was like, it was on her planet that we had turbo lasers too. And he learned, and it was just neat seeing, he learned about those there, and now he could take out, provide cover against a pirate frigate and then run away before he gets blown up. But
it's probably not okay to make a Saving Private Ryan sort of joke. But I immediately thought of like Neil could have given some advice to Barry Pepper's sniper character to move a little quicker once his location was identified. Because Neil, I gotta give him credit. The moment, the instant Neil's like, because he's like, he figured that out pretty quick. So good for him. But he's my favorite character in the show. He's just so fun. My wife and I loved him dearly because whoever the kid who played him is, I forget the actor's name, but he was like that perfect kind of. He's an innocent, and I love like every little detail. Like we loved how like his hair's combed. And how he like the bubble bath with the skylight as a recurring theme.
Yes.
Hilarious, as he watches the pirate ship coming in through the skylight. Like, oh goodness, what a great character.
He loses his cowardice, but he doesn't lose his caution.
Right.
And he's just such a great, like, in a way, I think he's the one who matures the most out of the four.
Yeah. Well, and he's the most relatable in some ways, because was Robert, I think you might have mentioned early on when we were talking about the pirate spaceport episode, that it's so hilarious that it's Neil who's the one who's like, look, aliens. He's, just the irony.
That wasn't me who pointed it out, but I thought that was a great line too.
Yeah. Look, aliens. Yeah, he's the most relatable in so many ways. Well, it was like a little David and Goliath too with him there. At that when SM-33 went off the rails and he hits him in the head with the rock and all that kind of stuff, or just throws the. It's like it's a little David and Goliath vibe with Neil here.
The one disappointment I have about Neil is that like they went really hard on a sort of pacifist.
Yeah, they did.
Idealism in him in, what was that, episode 3 or 4?
Yeah.
The one on at Akron.
Right.
And I feel like they never showed how he has integrated that longing for peace with this willingness to take violent action when necessary.
Right.
And I would have liked to see that get worked out. But I mean, maybe this is something that we have to say about the whole show, is that there's so much good stuff in it that not all of the good stuff we wanted had time to get worked out.
Yeah. Didn't really land in some ways, or I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but just I feel like I kind of expect, there were just certain things I sort of expected a little more, more conclusion, more completion on. Like I guess this is one where I feel like, I don't know, I would say I feel like a season 2 would be great, but I don't know exactly where you'd go with it after the big raucous adventure, but because you can't jump to like, well, now they're going off into the galaxy, unless they're, it's 5 years later and now they're grown up, because they're still kids. You can't just be like, oh, you've been out there once, go ahead now. Like, I don't think that makes a lot of sense.
They might be the most experienced pilots on the planet.
Well, it's true. Yeah, they do have more experience than anyone.
But
you definitely saw Wim eyeing the X-wings at the end.
Yes. Yeah.
I'll tell you what. One thing I also liked about that. I was thinking about this with the frigate when it came in, the way they had it going through the barrier, and then the way it came in under the clouds. I thought that really made ominous look, it's like, but
it did, yeah.
I just found that I really enjoyed seeing it that way too and stuff. And but then when you see them shooting, I'm like, why do you have to shoot? This is the people who don't even, it's like, what are they going to do?
Resist you, yeah.
Just go.
It almost felt like Independence Day in a way, like the night scenes with like the big mothership coming in, and everyone just freezes and watches it. Yeah.
I was wondering about that, especially and on the second time through, I don't think that they deliberately targeted any people. Yeah. I think they were shooting at buildings and vehicles.
Yeah, it was kind of here's what we can do.
Yeah, because as Jon said, we want these people to work for us.
Right.
But my first viewing, I was like, wait, this is just outrageous and unprovoked violence of just coming in and blowing stuff up for the fun of it almost. And then I was a little disturbed that when the Republic came in, the new Republic fighters were coming in and they just shot down this massive frigate ship right over a populated area.
Yeah.
Like, come on, guys. Get a tractor beam. Oh, man. How would you wrap up the show as a whole? Like if you were to like highs and lows of the entire series, what would jump out as like what made this really good and what you wanted to see improved or made better?
For me, I thought the kids, I think the high point for me was the kids themselves, the actors, who just absolutely carried the whole thing, and we're right up there. Because, I'm imagining that if I'm in that situation with, no experience whatsoever, in my own regard, except, like I think in my life, like the handful of times I've met celebrities, like I don't normally get too immediately sucked into the starstruck thing. Like I've always been, doesn't happen much, but I have some fun memories of being able to like meet a famous person and just, talk to them like a human being. And they always seemed to like that, to kind of on that peer level. But I imagine if you're a kid and you're like, I'm going to be in a show with Jude Law, like there has to be sort of like, oh my gosh, aren't you Steve Urkel? My dad loved that show. Because I'm sure that like the kids, like that's got to be interesting for Jaleel White to have this like side role. I was, by the way, disappointed that they didn't find a way for him to say, did I do that? By like blowing something up on accident. But so I think, the kids, like in the fact that they just, were totally just so confident in all of them, really, acting right on par with him, and it just fit. The interaction with him was so good, and with everybody else, I thought they did a great job. And then just, I don't know, the low point I would say for me, it just it felt like Star Wars throughout. I think sometimes I come away from it and I'm like, did that really? I don't know. Was that Star Warsy? That's that big question mark always, right? I thought this did that, but not to pick on this show. I think I'm getting to a point in my experience with a lot of the stuff that's come out over the last few years where I think I miss this sort of like standalone theater, like the big dramatic kind of like John Williams score kind of thing. Cause it's been a long time, right? Since we've had that, and we have all these other familiar properties and explorations to the story. And it's I'm enjoying it, but it's I think for me, the whole endeavor is kind of becoming like two different things now. There's like, for me, there's like movie Star Wars, and then there's like everything else almost. It's sort of becoming a different experience, but I wouldn't pin that on any, particular show or anything. But yeah, I think a little more, I don't know, a little more landing in some places like we talked about would have done it maybe a little bit for me, but I enjoyed it.
For me,
yeah, how about you, John?
I was going to say that, the kids were the definite high point. And for me, too, it's like with a lot of the 80s feel and stuff, being you know, a kid from the 80s and watching all those movies, like Return of the Jedi when I was 9 years old and stuff, and Goonies and, you know, E.T. and all those kind of movies, it just transported me back to that period of time and the wonder I would have felt as a kid, you know, if I was in their shoes and stuff like that. And that was, you know, so I really like that. It did feel more like a even though, I mean, I guess you technically did have a Jedi and lightsabers. It felt more like it did feel a little bit more like a traditional Star Wars kind of storyline and stuff versus what we've been getting with the darker stuff and some of these other series and stuff like the Acolyte and things. So it was like a little breath of fresh air kind of thing. Like, oh, finally we're having a little more positive, you know, and whimsical, like whim, you know, it's like storyline. But the one thing that I got, the negatives I had though with it would have been more like, I wish they would have delved a little bit. It's like you almost needed like one more episode, I think, or something. Either so you could delve into the background more with either, like, especially with Jod or something. And then, you know, it's like I would have liked to have seen a little bit more with the parents when the kids were away, you know, because it's like you had the one scene where they're trying to get a message out to them and stuff. But it was like I would have liked to have seen a little more concern other than, OK, we're just sitting here with the safety droids and, you know, that kind of stuff. I think they missed a little bit with a little development on that. But the only other thing is at the very end, I'm kind of like I was expecting more than it just seemed like it's over. And I was kind of like, on one hand, I liked it because I'm like, oh, well, this leaves it so much open. And, you know, what's Wim going to do and where, you know, what happened to, you know, but it also made me feel like I kind of I'm so used to, I guess, like the Mandalorian or something wrap up where they finish a season. It feels like, OK, this could be the end of a season. And if we wanted to stop the series, we could maybe, but we could carry it on more and stuff. And so it was like they're just left so many questions like, OK, now that the barrier is open, what's going to happen? You know, it's like, hey, we got a treasure planet of credits here, fellas. You know, it's like, and we have no guards other than, you know, the New Republic, which, you know, has a handful of X-Wings and a Corvette or whatever that ship is, you know, it's like, so it's, you know, and then.
Were you guys waiting for like a random, you know, like CGI or like deep fake like Leia? Sort of just
no,
like completely
no,
like, no, that's not, that doesn't fit here. Like, hope.
But that's, like, but that was my whole thing. It was like at the end of it, I kind of like, on one hand, I go back and forth. I'm like, this is a really neat ending. And then it was like, yeah, but there's so much opportunity for other seasons. But then how do you call it Skeleton Crew unless they're on a ship? You know, it's like, and visiting play or doing something, but. So I don't know, but I really liked this episode, but that was where at the end I was like, it's over. Aren't we going to see? And in 5 years, this is what their life is like, you know, or something like
kind of like the end of the Bad Batch.
Yeah.
Just something where, you know, it's like, it just seemed like the, you know, the end of the Acolyte, you know, it was like, okay, you could tell they were gearing up maybe for season 2 and stuff. And in here, it's like, it ended, but you're just like, okay, now Wim can dream more about being an X-Wing pilot and that kind of stuff. And
somebody's going to do one of those things where they take the screenshot of like the 10,000 ships at the end of Rise of Skywalker, you know, and they put a little circle around it. Like that's the Cinder.
Yeah.
You know, like, well, there's Hera next to him. Like, I don't know.
So.
Yeah. I loved the fact that, I mean, with a number of these shows, pacing has been an issue, and I wouldn't say this is perfectly paced, but with a lot of the other shows, it's been like, oh, this feels like it's dragging on an episode too long. They could have done this an episode shorter. And like you're saying, John, we're thinking, wouldn't it hurt to have one more episode? I wanted more from this. So the pacing problems, it's not that it lacks problems, but the problems are in the other direction. And that's, I don't know, that's kind of a nice relief. I agree. The performances were great all around, especially the kids. I've seen critique that, you know, the finale didn't connect to the larger galaxy and lore more, but I I think it's a really good ending for this story. And one of the things I loved about Mando season 1 was how it almost entirely was its own story. Like, you could enjoy it completely on its own terms and not need to know anything else about the rest of Star Wars. And this show was very much like that. It's just, I think there's a value to that. And I love the big lore heavy stories like Ahsoka. But I think I'm glad there is a place for these sort of connected, but essentially standalone stories. So
yeah.
Well, I wonder if we don't get a season 2 of this, or if this is the end of it, then it seems like they left a lot of opportunity though for writing, or like storylines and books, or comic book or other areas instead of just TV or movies, because because of all the backstory now of the great works and how did all those happen, and stuff in the past. And then of course does Wim become a fighter pilot? What does KB do? What does Wendell, it's like, because I was searching on Wim a little bit. I'm like, did I come across him in any of these other audiobooks I've been listening to, like Aftermath? And, it's like things that happen after, either right after Return of the Jedi or, during the last 3 movies and stuff that have been out there. And and he hasn't been a character. So it was like, at least as far as I could tell, at least it wasn't like online with Wikipedia or something, I don't think.
Yeah.
So, but it's like,
although it wouldn't surprise me if he eventually does get connected to, minor or background characters in existing shows and media, movies.
Right. But, that'd be another thing though, too. It's like, now that you find out that Wendell's dad, said he had thought about adventures. Well, maybe he could be a captain on a ship and then bring along kids as the crew, or something like that. And, we know KB knows how to, so maybe that would be something like a season 2. I don't know. But
there's a lot of room to explore.
Yeah.
and sort of this is always the frustrating thing about the Star Wars franchise is you don't know what's gonna come out in the future and what's not, and you can just, I don't know, can probably just count on it being different. Before we started recording, we were talking a little bit about what's coming up in the future, and we've got Andor season 2 in a few months now. Visions season 3 is supposed to come out later this year, but it doesn't have a release date, and at this point anyway. And we're supposed to get the Mando and Grogu movie, which doesn't even have an official title, but it's supposed to be sometime in 2026. So it's like, I don't know. Star Wars is probably always going to be my favorite fandom, but it's also one of the most frustrating ones. With that said, now that Skeleton Crew is over, we have a little bit of a gap before Andor season 2 starts up. So on this podcast, we are going to go back to sort of some occasional episodes on various topics. Until then, in the meantime, we would love to hear your thoughts, dear listeners, about Skeleton Crew, about what we've said here tonight, about what we've said about the whole show, about anything Star Wars, what's coming up, what you've seen, maybe what you'd like to hear from this podcast. Please drop us a line at starwars@sqpn.com. You can go to our Discord channel, go to our website for an invite, sqpn.com/discord. Or if you're on Facebook, you can look us up at facebook.com/starquestmedia. if you happen to have tumbled out of a starship onto a pile of cold, hard credits and you want to buy some pinpricks of light for your own life in this dark, dark galaxy, get yourself over to our merch store, get some official Secrets of Star Wars gear featuring our slogan, Finding Hope in a Galaxy Far, Far Away. You can find that at sqpn.com/merch. And of course, be sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever you're listening to your podcasts on. Check out all of our StarQuest shows. We even have a YouTube channel. And once again, if you would like to support StarQuest generally and this podcast in particular, head on over to our Patreon, head to sqpn.com/give. So that will wrap us up for this episode and for Skeleton Crew. Until next time, Mike, thanks so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Robert.
John.
Good to see you, John.
Yeah. John, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Had a great time.
And once again, I've been Robert King. Thank you all for sharing the secrets of Star Wars on StarQuest.
Here's another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy. Vatican II in a Year. Find it wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/Vatican.